Hi, beautiful people, and welcome to Jesus, Healing, and Everything in Between. I actually have already filmed this twice. And if I seem irritated or anything of that sort, that is why I have to repeat the same stories and everything that I said for the third time now. And that's, yeah, the devil's just been throwing his little arrows at me. And we're going to do this anyway. I'm not letting it stop me. This is something that God has laid on my heart. So I feel that this is something I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm not going to let Satan's pettiness stop me. I want to go ahead and give you guys a heads up. I do have lights behind me. The FPS do not line up with the FPS in the camera with the lights. So basically, they're like lightly twinkling. So if you are photosensitive and that's like triggering, like please proceed with caution or don't even bother watching. You can listen or just don't be here at all. Like I'm not going to get offended. I just don't want anyone to be not safe. And then also there are probably going to be background noises because this is not a pro setup. I've got a mic, my phone, a ring light, and that's about it. So I have dogs laying on a bed right in front of me and they're bound to make some kind of noise. And then there's a train out back who apparently trains are people, which definitely has its time that it comes and goes. So yeah, just ignore those if you can. Bear with me because this is as good as we're going to get right now. Okay, first of all, who am I? If you don't know me, my name is Deserae K. I'm 25. I'll be 26 in April. Um, I I'm a believer in Jesus. I do want to put that out there first at just the beginning here because I want you to know that if you don't know Jesus, if you have no interest in religion or anything of that sort, you are welcome here. I will absolutely talk about my God and talk about my story because God is a huge part of my story. But that does not mean that you can't be here. There's no judgment if you don't believe in Jesus. That's your walk, that's your journey. And I don't want this to feel like a secluded place just because Jesus is in the title. So please just know that you're welcome here no matter what religion you are, no matter what race you are, no matter how you view the world. Like, I don't care who you are. You are a beautiful person who has a soul, and you deserve love, and you deserve to be in a safe place. And that's why I wanted to start this podcast. I want to create a safe place for people to come together and have real conversations. And I personally am in a healing journey in my life, and I know that the stuff I've learned can help others. And I also believe that I can learn things from you guys. And then honestly, this is just a very therapeutic thing for me. I really enjoy talking, I enjoy sharing my stories, and I just love to help people. I've been through a lot and I want it to be used for good. And I believe that God has given me this outlet and, this sort of platform to do that. So that's why we're here. So yeah, please know this is a safe place. There will be no holding back. It will be pure honesty here, and I am all about transparency, so you're going to get exactly who I am. I am going to do my best to not put on a front, to not give you a projected image, but just be my complete self. So you can hold me accountable for that. Okay, so a little bit about me. I don't know, I'm technically an actress. I haven't done a ton lately, but I am working on an audio project right now, so my first, voice acting project. I also have dabbled in modeling, but I don't really feel that's something that I really am interested in. It just feels kind of pointless for me at this point. Honestly, I was in a really bad place when I was modeling, and I wore this, I said that I was a believer in Christ, which I was, but I was so lukewarm, guys. And if you know me and you've seen any pictures that just made you raise your eyebrow, I'm sorry. From the bottom of my heart, I'm sorry that I put that out there, that I projected myself in a way that was worldly. And honestly, I was so broken. I had no clue where my worth came from at that point. And I was dealing with so much heaviness in my life that was the only thing I felt like I had going for me was my body. And when you're told that your personality sucks your entire life and that, you are disinteresting or just rejected as a whole, or just straight up used for your body, you kind of start getting convinced that that may be all that's good about you. So yeah, I don't necessarily model anymore. Wouldn't be opposed to doing it for good reasons, of course, but I haven't been behind a camera or in front of a camera. I think I'm saying in front of a camera. Having my picture taken professionally in, I don't know, a year and a half, maybe 2 years. It's definitely been a while. So, what else do I do? I'm apparently a podcaster. Clearly, that's what we're doing here. This is new to me, but I think that it comes really natural. So I believe that this is a gift of mine. We'll see. I also, so like hobbies, I guess, I enjoy acrylic painting when I'm in the mood. I'm not an artist. I just love to create things. I'm a creator at heart. Same with editing. I'm a creator at heart there. I don't do anything crazy. Like, it's not like a career or anything. I just enjoy editing. My sister, Lizzie, makes these incredible edits that are just, ugh, I'm so jealous. Like, she's so good. And she actually taught me last fall, I believe. I was dealing with a lot and I just needed something to do that was, I don't know, different. And she was bored with her edit that she was working on. She's like, hey, will you do this for me? So she taught me, and I actually really enjoyed it. And I loved how it turned out. And just like watching something you create come alive, oh, it's just so fulfilling. I love that feeling. So I do technically still do that when I'm in the mood or when I'm inspired. And it's nothing crazy. I just like edit like celebrities or TV shows and like storylines, things like that. So, what else do I do? I'm a writer technically, but I'm not like a pro or anything. I just love writing. And I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but I don't know. I'm just a creator. I just love being creative. I have a lot going on up here, and I like to get it out. So that's just an outlet of mine. Yeah, other than that, I'm a believer. I've been saved since technically 8th grade. Got saved when I was younger, but you know how it goes. Yeah, and I'll definitely share my testimony at some point, but that would take a whole session just for that. So we're going to go ahead and keep moving along. All right, so I think that's enough about me and what we're doing here. So I asked a question to my Instagram followers. What are some like questions you have about life or like advice that you want or just anything that you want to ask? Just to kind of open up that window. And I got a question, I only got a couple. And the first one I'm going to answer today asked me, how do you know the difference between a sign from above and just a coincidence? So we're going to answer that today. First of all, my friend, the person who asked this, like my heart just goes out to you, and just know that I see you, I hear you, and I know the battle, the struggle of it. And it's so valid. It's so hard. If you're not gifted with that discernment, it can be rough. But I'm going to share with you my experience. I'm going to tell you how I experience signs in my life and coincidences and trying to figure out which is which. And then hopefully that will help. And if not, then it's just an entertaining story and it's a part of my story. So we're just going to do that. But, okay, let's see. Where do we start? Most of my signs have had to do with relationships or guys. I know that that can come across, if you know me, as like, oh, here we go again. And that's fine. You can think that. I've dated maybe 3 people in my life, like actual relationships that I can think of. I have crushed on a lot of people. I've had feelings for a handful of people. And I've had crushes since like 1st grade. So, like, bad crushes. So, yeah, I've had some moments where I'm not proud of how much guys took place in my life. But also, if you are willing to understand I didn't have much growing up. I didn't have, a dad who filled that place in my life, who was a man that would love me. And I sure as heck didn't have my mom at the time. Um, I had a grandpa, and that was it. I had my grandpa. He was my world, and he took care of me. My grandma was also not kind to me. So I just didn't have a lot of love growing up. And I think that after all the therapy and going through a bunch of trauma work, I've learned that I was never boy crazy. I was broken. I was lost. I was searching for love. And the mother part is actually a real thing. There's a book called Mother Hunger. It radically changed my life. Um, Dude, it literally like messes up with a child's development if they don't have their mother at a young age and like grow up properly with that. So I'm not gonna sit here and defend myself. Like, I don't owe anyone an explanation. The reason I'm explaining as much as I did is because I want you to know my heart. I want you to understand, if you do know me and you're watching this and you have your thoughts about me, like, I can't change what people think about me, and I'm tired of barking up that tree. Like, life is so much more fragile, and there are more important things to deal with than what people think of me, because I can't please everybody. No matter how much I've had a tendency to, I can't. So, yeah, a lot of guys have messed me up. So the first couple ones that we're going to talk about, they're just smaller ones, but you'll see why I'm explaining it. So I had one guy in my life who we just went back and forth a lot. We were trying to figure out if this was something that, was meant to be, if it was written in the stars, and it was just a bad place. I'm not proud of it. Goodness, I was married. I don't know if I mentioned that yet, but I was in a really bad place there. I was in an abusive marriage, and I was also extremely codependent and afraid of being alone. So when my ex is like, hey, go find someone so you can leave me, I did. I'm not proud of it. It was bad. But there was this one guy that just kept making sense to me, and we were in and out of each other's lives, and I was like, okay, let's just see. So at one point when we were talking, there were a couple of odd things that happened, and there were a lot, if I'm being honest, in all these stories, but I'm just gonna give a couple of them because we don't have all day to talk about every sign I've ever experienced in my life. So I don't know. We were talking, and I know at his job, the job he did, he worked with, I guess, furniture and stuff like that. And so one day he had come across this random jewelry, and it was a blue eye that was actually an evil eye. Looking back, I didn't know that then, of course, because I wasn't fully aware of like spiritual things and demonic things. But that, and then an Aries thing, and it was just like random. And so I remember him sending it to me when we were talking, like, oh my gosh, Desi, what the heck, and I'm like, okay, that's a little weird, and again, I was looking for any reason why we were supposed to be together, because I wanted it to make sense as much as it didn't, and it was just a really, complicated thing in my mind. So the other thing, I know he was like walking down the steps from work one day, and outside there were two lamps, and one was mint green and one was coral. And I don't know if it's obvious, I love pastels. And my favorite colors at that time were specifically coral and mint. And of course they had like their, they were trendy at one point. They had their time. So it wasn't like totally out there, but it was odd that they were just there out of nowhere. But again, God may not have been the one that did that, like that easily could have been Satan. So I'm not, but at the time I was like, oh my gosh, like all this weird stuff happening. And there were a lot of things. At one point there were rings involved. This guy just loved me with every inch of his heart. And the reason why we didn't work out, he wasn't a man of God. So that's how I knew at the end of everything, this is not the person that I want to marry. But yeah, there were rings involved, and I saw them, and this was actually way past, because we talked a lot, a lot of, back and forth throughout a few years, if I'm being honest. So um, at one point, oh, I'm going to be exposing myself now. So a few years ago, I saw this video, and this girl was talking about like some sign she asked for her person to God. And it was specifically a rose. And it was this really sweet story because it was like, you know, I guess some guy that was like in her life already, and he got her this like ceramic rose when they were dating. And I don't know, I don't remember the whole story. I just know I was like really moved by it, and I was like, oh my gosh, God, like I want to do that. Like I want to give you something specific that I can ask you for, and you would, give that to me, to give me confirmation that this is the person that I should marry. um and basically, what happened was I found out about these rings later after I'd already made that decision with God and like prayed a specific sign. And that symbol looked like what I thought, like what was on the ring. Like there was a symbol on the ring that looked like what I asked God for confirmation about. But he still wasn't a man of God. And like there was no peace in my heart about us being together at that point. Like it was just like oh my gosh, I'm trying to figure something out. And um, we have these weird connections with certain shows and like artists and things like that. And there were just all these weird things that were happening. And at the end of it all, I'm just like, this isn't God. Like, this is not what God wants. I know this. So we worked it out. We were good, and we figured out how to get through it all. But I was misled a lot by that. And ultimately, I knew better. As much as I don't want to like say that, I did. I did know that if I didn't have peace in my heart, if I didn't feel in line with the Holy Spirit, then this probably isn't it. And I desired so badly to be in the will of God all the time, and like would just go to like pretty extreme lengths to make sure that I was doing that. And anytime we talked, I felt like I was out of God's will. So that one was fun. Other one, definitely not my proudest moment, but we're going to be real here. This is a safe place. I fell for a married guy, and I had no intentions to fall for him at all, but that's typically how it goes. It was strictly emotional, but still an affair. My heart still breaks for his wife today, and I hope to God that she knows that I'm terribly sorry. This was never my intention, and that marriage they have is sacred, and I had no right even bothering to step on that ground. But of course, we were both in situations. I was married at the time. He was married. He was dealing with stuff, and I was dealing with stuff. And we found connection in each other and comfort in each other and all that delightful stuff. So, as far as signs with him, oh my gosh, it was bad. I'm not going to lie. Not that I would ever lie. That's just something I say a lot. I had a list of dates in my life, like written out in a note on my phone, of all these odd dates and connections throughout my entire life with a lot of different people. It wasn't just married guy. There were a ton. A lot. To the point that I was like, am I in a real, like, is this real life? Like, I know God's real. I know that, like, I'm created and, like, life is real, but is it real? Like, is this a joke, or is God just that specific with my life and every detail, or is everything just a mere coincidence? Like, and yeah, I absolutely was reaching at certain points. There were certain signs, there were certain dates that lined up that I was like, okay, that's pushing. Like, you don't need to connect that. It's not really that big of a deal. But I think the reason why I was searching for so many connections and, connection, did I just say connections? Yeah. Connections and like signs was because I wanted to know God's will. I wanted to know who he had for me, even though I don't believe in soulmates. I wanted to know the truth about like what God had, and I wanted what he had specifically. I didn't want counterfeits and second options. Like, I didn't want to repeat what I went through with my ex. Like, I really wanted to do it right. And from a young age, like, just envisioning, like, being married one day and having a family and all those things, like, I wanted to find him because I didn't want to get hurt anymore. And that's so extremely understandable. Like, looking back and just giving little Desi grace, like, I was constantly crushing on these guys and they were rejecting me because I was a dork. I mean, all of us were probably dorky at one point in our life, but like, I was a weird kid. I had emotional issues and I didn't fit in with anybody, and the guys I liked were way out of my league. So, yeah, like, I mean, it was kind of a setup, but either way, like, I got hurt a lot from a very young age. And by the time that, I got married, like, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is it. Like, I'm never going to have to do this again. And the reason why I married him was for that security. So even after the divorce, like, trying to figure out what God's plan was for me, again, I just found myself in that cycle of like, God, like, just give him to me. Like, can we just get to the good part? Like, I don't want to get hurt anymore. So yeah, I talked to this guy. There were a lot of weird coincidences and things like that. And just some of the few that I remember to this day that just made me like shudder, a little bit. Like, I know when I was leaving the courthouse after filing for divorce, like officially, this guy and I were just friends, obviously. And I didn't want to be friends, but he was married and it was like, I don't know what he thinks because he wasn't very vocal about how he felt, but also that would have been wrong for him. So that's totally understandable why he couldn't tell me. But anyways, he calls me as I'm like leaving the courthouse. Like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? I'm like, ha, do you really want to know? I'm leaving the courthouse. I just filed for divorce. And like, we met maybe a month before I decided to officially divorce. I went back and forth with my ex for like years trying to leave him. And it was actually because this guy that I met, like, he just made me feel like you can do this. Like, I guess it was just the last straw. I mean, like, I had so many people trying to support me and trying to, encourage me to leave and get out of that situation. But there was this false hope that I had that maybe we'd end up being together, married guy and I. And I didn't know how to go about it, but I just knew I had the strength. And I, told my ex, I was like, hey, I think I'm ready. Think we can go ahead and end this. And he's like, all right, cool, let's do it. So it was a whole thing. But when he called me that day, I was like, okay, that was a little strange. But I will say, growing up since then and learning how life works, you see, Satan can do things, guys. Like, he's not all grand and great, but he can do things. So I am a firm believer that manifestation is straight up demonic. I think it's evil. A lot of people think it's, it's harmless and there's nothing wrong with it. But, okay, so I'm going to give you an example here. This is how easy it is. So, say John and Susie, right? So, Susie's like, I really want to go on a date with John. So she starts manifesting it, John will ask me out, John will ask me out, John will ask me out. And then all Satan's got to do is go, hey, John, look at Susie. She's pretty cute. Why'd you hit her up? Like, that's all it's got to be. Like, it's that easy. So then John asks Susie out. I manifested it. Oh my gosh, I have power. I can make my life be what I want it to be. No, Satan just did his dirty work. Like, that's all he did. That was not God. And then, of course, John's a hoe bag and awful to Susie, and Susie gets hurt, and now what? Oh, did you manifest that hurt? Like, anyways, we don't need to go, like, super deep in that story because we could go a long way. But my point is, all Satan had to do when I went to the courthouse and my married friend called me, hey, go check on Desi. That's all it took. Like, all he had to do was think about it in that moment. And then, bam, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a sign. God's saying we're soulmates. Like, I was so naive and foolish then. Because, again, there was stuff that was just, like, so constant, just around every corner. And something was always happening. And it just didn't make sense because I'm like, you're married. God's not going to send you a married man. God is not going to send you someone else's husband. Like, I will straight up tell you that right now. If he's married, it's not from God. Stop it now. If she's married, stop it right now. It's not from God. Go get back into God's plan, repent, and God will bless you with what he has for you if that is his plan for you. But do not mess with that. Like, I don't care if they're in an abusive situation, like, you let them figure their crap out and then maybe, God can do something there, but just don't play God. That's not cool. Marriage is so sacred, guys. I just want to go back and just, like, rattle myself, like, Desi, get it together. Like, this is so not cool. Like, you are messing with holy ground. Not cool. But of course, the signs just kept going. After that, like, there were all these weird things happening, and, like, every time I, like, tried to, like, self-sabotage him out of my life, then something crazy would happen again, and, like, there was silly things. Like, I know we were both in, accidents on Valentine's Day, which is just life, that doesn't have to be anything. We were both, like, raised by our grandparents, and his grandpa, like, lived up the road from me, like, at that time that we were talking, or, like, knew each other. I shouldn't say talking. We weren't talking. Trust me, we weren't talking. But, like, having emotional feelings, I guess. I don't know. It was complicated. He was also not... I'm not trying to trash the guy. I'm just telling my story for what it is. Like, he was kind of controlling, and everything that he did kind of decided how I was going to feel. So most of the time, I never called him. He always called me. That's why the call thing, like, threw me off. Because he would call me at the most weird times. And I'm like, what? Why would you... Right now, why are you calling? But I would never call him. I never texted him first unless I, like, literally needed something or I was, like, freaking out about something. But he had, like, hundreds of friends. He was one of those guys, I'm like, oh, like, you're so cool. You don't need to take your time to deal with someone like me. Like, again, he was out of my league regardless of him being married. So it just, like I said, there were just these weird things that happened. And at the end of it all, oh my gosh, like, I just had this realization that this guy, whether he's married or not, if we were talking and, like, he was dating me and treating me like this is a repeat of my ex. And that was a really hard pill to swallow because I thought this guy was my dream guy. But the thing was, he made my nervous system dysregulated. Therefore, he wasn't safe. Therefore, whether he gets divorced or not, we don't need to be talking. And I respect him as a person. I wish him the best, but I definitely have cut that off. Like, I don't want to talk to you. Your marriage is holy. I deserve better regardless of even, like, the friendship part. Like, everything was just really toxic. It was really, really toxic. So the signs and crap, yeah, there was a lot. And like I said, the weird list, there were just a lot of weird things. And you may think little of the things that I experienced with the signs, but for me, like, it was like, everything making sense and lining up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm gonna figure it out, like, it's like life is just some big puzzle, you gotta put all the pieces together. It was ridiculous. But then the third one, this one was a fun one. So this was after I cut off ties with the married guy. And I literally, like, remember having a phone call with him, like a closure phone call, and, like, screaming at him, like, you don't understand, like, I was under this impression that I couldn't not like a guy because in my life there was this pattern of I had to have a crush on someone at all times. Otherwise, I was like, I don't know. I can't recall a time in my younger years where I didn't have a crush on someone. So yeah, it was codependent. It was unhealthy. Totally aware of that. And I remember, like, being deceived by this. Like, this was Satan's trap. You can't function without liking a guy. So therefore, I'm, like, arguing with this guy. I'm like, I want to figure out our crap, but, like, I don't know what to do because, dude, if it's not you, it's going to be someone else. But ultimately, I knew that it wasn't sitting right with me, that was how my life had to go. Because I just felt like, I was labeled boy crazy a lot in high school and even past that. And I'm just like, what's really going on here? Because there's something deeper happening in me, because I can function without a guy. Like, I have these moments where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just want to be free. Like, of course, past tense, I had moments like that. And I knew that it would be possible, but I didn't know how to get there. So I'm jumping all over the place. But basically, let me give you a quick rundown here. So the married guy hurt me really bad, and we're going to just go back to January 2021 because that's the time frame. So January 2021, I got extremely hurt by married guy. Then I was like broken, could not function, suicidal, like just a whole bunch of stuff, like not my best time. And then for the following like 3 or 4 months, I talked to so many people, and that's kind of an exaggeration. I think it was like 4 guys. I talked to like 4 guys in a short amount of time, rehashed stuff with old people. Like, again, I was just like, I gotta replace married guy. I cannot live this way. I didn't want to freaking hurt. Like, it broke me, and I didn't know how to grieve. And being honest, I am still working through just learning how to grieve, because I have put so much stuff down and like ignored it, because I would just literally cry for one day and then be like, they're lost, moving on. Like, it's called splitting. I was a pro at it for a long time, but now as I've gotten older, I've been forced to really sit with the pain and grieve stuff that I went through years ago. And it's tough, but that's why you should work through your crap when you have it head on. Like, just feel the pain. Feel what's necessary to heal. That was my phrase in the later half of 2021. So, anyways, talked to a bunch of guys. My friend circle was super toxic, and they were just judging me completely. They didn't care about my brokenness and what I was dealing with, to the point that I got accused of being a hoe. And I'm like, I love all of these people, but every single one of them is not a believer, which I know also is a red flag on my part. But none of them were believers, and they were like having straight up, premarital sex constantly. And I'm over here going on a few dates, and I'm like, I'm a hoe for talking to a Christian guy? Like, what? So at the end of it all, like, I just learned who really cared about me during that time. And I was extremely hurt by a lot. Not only married guy, just like everything was very painful. So at the end of everything, I ended up with this last guy, and it was actually a childhood friend of mine that reconnected with me, and I got assaulted. I mean, I'm just gonna put it straight. Like, yeah, at first I was like, oh my gosh, I just had sex, like, the guilt tripping and all that, like freaking out. And then a week later, after going to the doctor and a certain experience happening, I was like, oh my gosh, I was assaulted again. The other one was my ex, and it just felt like, I don't know, it was like, wow, how did I get here? How did I end up here again? I thought that we weren't going to do this again, and I was so determined to not be that person, but there I was, her. And, yeah, it broke me, like, a lot. So after that day, I was hanging out with my best friend and trying to work through the mental, emotional aspect of everything I was dealing with. And I remember, like, exactly where I was. I have a very visual memory. I don't know if that's a blessing or not, but I just remember I was driving, and my phone dinged, and I know I shouldn't look down at my phone while I'm driving. Gonna own up to that. But I did, and of course I was at a stop sign, which doesn't excuse it, but just saying, I wasn't like I was, like, driving. But anyways, this guy from my childhood, a different part of my childhood, reached out. And I immediately just, like, threw my phone. Like, I don't even want to know what he just said. Like, I am so done with men. Screw them all. You all suck. Get away from me. Don't touch me. And, of course, I had to pick up my phone, and get over myself. And I'm like, all right, what does he want? And he told me that, well, first he asked me if I was going to church. And I said, yeah, online because COVID. Um, I'm just not, going in person right now because everything. And he tells me that, well, this church is open, the one that he goes to, and we are having a conference, and I wanted to invite you to it. And he sends me a link to it, and I'm like, being invited to a conference about 12 hours since my assault. Is this God? Is this a sign, God? Is this a coincidence? Like, am I supposed to go? Am I supposed to ignore him? Like, why is he the one messaging me? Why is he messaging me? Of all people, God, why would you use him? That just, it was mind-boggling to me. Like, this guy and I had a tiny, teeny weeny history that he doesn't even remember. And we barely even talked after high school, like, maybe twice. And I mean talked, like, just, like, catch up, like, hi, how are you, kind of thing. Like, not actual talk. And there were a couple times from January to June. That was the time frame of, like, all the guys and the bad stuff that happened up to the assault in June. And he had asked me, or was it May? I don't know. Either way, it was, bad timing. He was, like, he popped in my DMs, like, twice, maybe, just, like, agreeing with something I posted or liking a story. I don't know. There wasn't anything, like, super, oh my gosh, like, what are you doing here, And there was one time that I did, like, I don't know if it was, like, a TBH type thing, like, a cooler one, though, because TBHs are not cool anymore. But I know at one point I had, like, confessed to him on a story that was, like, directly, when you, like, people ask you a question, you answer their question, and then they get notified. It was one of those things. And I remember telling him, like, you're cool, whatever, I don't know, something like that. You and I talked, I had a crush on you really bad in high school, but, you talked to my cousin, like, I don't know if you remember any of this, but, you're cool, whatever, like, happy for you. And so he was like, what? You had a crush on me? And I'm like, dude, we talked. Like, I remember being at my best friend's, she was babysitting someone because she was a little older. And I was hanging out with her, and we had this, like, basketball game that day, and I think he was a basketball player, if I remember correctly. And I just remember, like, we talked, and somehow had his number. I don't know how it all happened. Like, so much trauma happened in my younger years, so I barely remember much. But I just know we talked, and he said he wanted to, like, hang out with me at the game, and then just never talk to me after that. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then I found out my cousin talked to him, who also hates me. So that's a whole different story. But basically, like, he didn't know any of that. He did not remember any of it. And the boy was a player. I'm sure he'll own up to that. And if not, that's fine. Like, that's just my experience of him as a person. And, so hearing him back in 2021, like, pop back up like that, I was like, why are you here? Don't want to talk to you. Go away. So what happened was I had gone back and forth. I thought about going to this conference, and then I finally decided I was going to go. And at the conference, it was hard for me because the church was a place where I went with my ex, and I knew going back there could bring up a lot of, like, feelings, and also just this, like, reputation that I carried being my ex's ex-wife, like, I didn't like that label because he made me out to be someone I wasn't, because that's the kind of person he was, and I couldn't defend myself, like, I didn't feel like that was going to change anything because I was unwell, I was toxic, but he was also abusive, so there was a lot going on there that other people didn't know was going on behind doors, so I was scared, and when I decided to go back, it was, like, this big decision, like, okay, I'm going to go to this conference, Lord, because I feel like you're calling me to do this, and so I do, and I go, and, church boy, so we're going to call him, he's got some siblings, and, one of the siblings, I remembered, wasn't too fond of me in high school, and I was just so sure that I wasn't going to have any friends, but ironically, that's kind of the opposite of what happened. That person actually asked me to come sit with them, and we ended up talking, and then we ended up planning on, like, going on a coffee date, and then we were going to do a book together, which is so ironic, the book that we did, which, if I remember, I'll try to remind you at the end why that's ironic. But anyways, they really helped me a lot with just healing during that time, and I'm very grateful for that person. And then there was a sweet lady, she was older, who remembered me from my time with my ex there. And at the conference, there was a conversation at the end where you kind of just got to ask questions anonymously. And, they had like a question panel and everyone answered the questions. And one of mine was like, how do you stop hating men? I mean, there was more to more to the question, like, how do you stop hating a man or, hating someone for, because it wasn't just one person. It was like, how do you, I don't know. I was just trying to figure out, like, can someone help me, like, get rid of this anger that I have towards men? Because at that point, I couldn't trust any. And the conversation really helped. And then this person specifically on the panel said, please come find me afterwards and I want to talk to you. So I did. I found her. And I was like, yeah, so I was assaulted a few weeks ago. I'm, like, really broken. I'm scared. I'm angry. And blah, 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 blah. And so she was, like, super sweet to me and, just talked me through it. And then we also talked a little bit about, like, my history because she had no idea about my ex, who he kind of was, which was no surprise there. And then I got asked if I would come try out the young adult group there. And I personally felt like maybe God was calling me to come back to this church. And it was kind of scary because I'm like, okay, a lot of bad things happened here. And I actually went there when I was younger, too, before I met my ex. And I had some trauma there, too, as well, like just being in my childhood. So it just was a very trauma-filled place. And I'm like, maybe God wants to heal me by going here? Like, I don't know. So long story short, I decided I was going to go. I go back for young adult group. And, I got closer with one of his siblings. And then the other sibling was super cool. They were just my buddy. I love them to this day, and I just am so thankful for who they were to me. But basically, I was a part of the group. I come in, and the setup was super awkward. They were basically all a family or together. So I was the only one that didn't fit in the picture, and that made me extremely, like, outcasty feeling, and it was hard because they were all, like, in college and, my age, but they were all, like, dealing with this stuff that was so normal. And I'm like, I got married, I got divorced, I have all this trauma, I've been through all these bad experiences, and on top of that, I am technically a mother to a teenager right now because I took my sister in. I don't know if I mentioned that part. And, they're all in high school. They're all in college, and, they're worried about getting their papers finished, and that's totally valid. Like, that's stressful. Heck yeah, like, I didn't go to college, but that's stressful. But for me, I'm like, I don't relate to any of this. Like, I don't know what to do. Even with prayer requests and stuff, I was like, how do I ask for a prayer request when I'm gonna get weird looks? Like, oh my gosh, it was rough. But anyways, the group setup was kind of awkward. Everyone was together except for Church Boy, so it was me and him were the only ones that weren't connected. And I was like, well, this is awkward. Okay, I'm gonna try to just blend in as best as I can. And basically, I was working through so much, like, self-confidence and, like, trying to figure out who I am in Christ at the time. God really worked in my heart at the conference. And I need to mention something that's kind of important to the story. So at the conference itself, I actually dedicated 6 months to solely God. And I was like, God, I don't want any boys. I'm not talking to anyone. I just want you. And, God really just brought me back to my first love with him. And, it was a very beautiful experience. And that's why I feel like I was supposed to go to that conference. But anyways, back to the group. So first week, some odd things happen. He was the leader of the group. And I was like, oh, cool. I gotta actually look at your face. Awesome. He was attractive, but not what I expected to be with. So I didn't really know what I was supposed to think about that. But the way it all was set up, it was like, okay, I don't have a boy in my life. I'm trying not to catch feelings for this guy. Oh my gosh, I need to go back 2 seconds here. So before the conference, like 2 days before, church boy messaged me. He had sent me something. I think it was like a men's health thing that I posted, men's mental health thing that I posted. He responded and was like, I'm going to therapy this week. And I'm just like, oh, that's awesome. Proud of you. Why are we talking? Like, why are you messaging me? You have a girlfriend. He had a very, like, committed relationship at the time. And I was very confused why he was talking to me, of all people, because we don't talk. So it was very odd to me why he was there, you know. So he was like, every time I've messaged you, you've been, like, really short. Is there something that I'm reading into or something? And I'm like, okay, how do I vaguely tell you that I don't want to talk to you because I don't want to catch feelings for you again, because I know I have a pattern in my past where if a guy represented himself after I'd already gotten over him, I would catch feelings again. And there was like, I don't think there's ever been a time that didn't happen. So I was like, this is like bound and determined to happen. I don't want this to happen. And you have a girlfriend, and like, this is not what I want to do, you know? And that was, you know, before my dedication of the 6 months. So like, I'd already determined like, I don't want to like anybody. So don't talk to me. But I couldn't tell him like all that, you know, so I just vaguely told him. So he responds and he's like, actually he asked me a question because he didn't understand what I was saying. So I had to explain it again in other wording, hoping to still not sound stupid. And then he was like, oh, okay, I understand. I respect that from now on. I'm like, all right, cool. So I go to the conference, and like I said, it was what it was. He didn't really talk to me or even bother coming up to me or anything. I don't remember even him acknowledging me. So back in the group setting, I was just like, ugh, what am I going to do? Like, this guy he's, you know, a man of God, supposedly. Like, this is really hard to ignore this. And of course, the setup was just awkward. And I'm like, Lord, are we doing something? Or am I supposed to just be, like, really, like, is this, like, a distraction? Like, I don't know what's going on. So for the first few, like, weeks, I just tried ignoring everything. But then it just got weird. Like, it just kept gradually getting weirder. So the first thing at church, every message was so perfect for what I was dealing with, which is not anything to do with the boy. Like, that's just God. But I'm saying that to say that I felt like God was trying to confirm to me, like, I want you here. This is the place I have for you. So I felt like God was speaking to me and wanted me at this church. And then this guy, he comes in on the second week, I think, and he's like, hey guys, so the one girl and I broke up, and I'm like really hurting, so like pray for me. And I'm just like, of course you guys broke up. The second that I come in and, you know, you're acting weird, and I didn't know. I don't know. It was just weird. So then this just set up a whole issue for me. Now I'm going home from group and I'm talking to my sister because she's my, you know, safe place about everything. And I'm like, I don't want to catch feelings for him, but I know I need to go to this church. Like, I don't know what to do. And my sister just told me, like, if you like him, it's okay. You know, you're allowed to like people. Like, he sounds like a good guy. And I'm like, but it's not what I want. Like, I mean, yeah, like, little Desi, that was the dream. Like, he would be, like, the description of that, you know. But I just loved the dynamic of the family. And I loved just the fact that they were that. They were a family. And I didn't have a family. Or in my experience, like, I didn't have that kind of bond and experience of a family. So, I don't know. I was trying so hard. Basically, I have this issue. If this is going to get complicated. So, if I find someone attractive, they scare me. It's intimidation. It's you know, inferiority. Like, I become smaller because they're gorgeous and I'm not, or whatever. Like, just growing up, I had a lot of insecurities, and it was very unlikely that a really cute boy would talk to me, you know, a person like me, as I would say. But I don't know. I mean, I just kind of shut down. I avert eye contact. I kind of look like I like am anti-you to some people. And so I kind of came across that way to church boy a lot. At least in my opinion, that's what I thought it looked like, because I'm like, I know I'm not being kind. Like, I look kind of like the B word like I'm not being very kind. Maybe I look stuck up. Like, I don't know what people perceive me as when I'm like that, but for me, I'm just like, you're cute, don't look at me. You scare me. Like, it's not anything mean at all. Like, I'm just like scared. So I just kind of avoided him for the most part. And then all this weird stuff just kept happening. And he would like try to go out of his way to talk to me, like in person, of course. And I don't mean that like excessively or anything. Like, there were just a couple times. And one of them, I understand why. I think I didn't eat that day. We were going to go somewhere, and everyone made a big deal out of it because I have celiac, and they were like, oh, we want to go somewhere where you can eat. I'm like, I'm not going to eat. Like, you guys go where the heck you want. I'll be fine. Like, I don't want to eat. But they're like, well, just in case if you want to eat, like, where can you eat? I'm like, I don't want to eat. Like, stop making it a big deal. Like, it doesn't need to be that big of a deal. I understand why they were being like that, but I literally, like, had no intention of eating that day because I was so anxious, and I don't do that when I'm anxious. So it was just a big deal that it did need to be. And so he, like, came over and was like, why aren't you eating? Like, really concerned about me. And I'm like, why are you here? You don't actually care. Like, I'm a mess. You're not going to want this. Like, why are you talking to me? And I understand, like, he had this role as the leader to kind of, like, be friendly and nice to everybody. And it was just hard to figure out what he saw in me. Like, was I a burden to the group? Did they actually want me there? Like, I was just constantly paranoid about what people thought of me there because I didn't feel like I fit in. So I'm like all over the place because I've told the story so many times, but basically a lot of like odd things happened, and it felt like God was like around every corner and just like speaking to me, and like there were things that he said that lined up with what I read in my scriptures, and then there were things that he said that I was reading in books, and then we were reading the same book at one point that was not intentional, like things like that. And I'm like, okay, what is this, God? Like, why is everything connecting with this guy? So of course my mind starts running, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I like this guy. I don't want to like him. I am literally dedicated, to 6 months with God right now. Like, I don't want to date. I don't want to talk to him. And I sure as heck know he's not interested in me or talking or dating. So what are we doing? Like, I cannot see a future with this guy, but I love his family. Oh my gosh. Like, I just love that family, and I want to be a part of that. And I don't know. It was like this torn place. I didn't really understand it myself, if I'm being honest. Like, most people in my life were like, Desi, do you like him? Like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I like who he is, I guess. I like that he likes Jesus. Loves Jesus. I like that he is, like, he had this, like, exterior that looked off, like, he was the kind of guy that, like, looked tough but had a heart, that kind of thing, which is typically what I've liked in the past. So again, I've also learned I'm, like, an extreme empath. So I think that when he told us about the breakup, I, like, felt that pain for him, and, like, I wanted to be a blessing to him. I wanted to, like, show him kindness and love and, like, just bring some light into his life, because I know, like, what it feels like to be broken. And again, I don't know. It was a mess. It was a huge mess. And no one knew anything except for the people in my life, of course, the few trusted people that I had. And I was meeting with my pastor at the time, like regularly meeting with him, counseling, and he seemingly liked him, but he called him a Christian boy, not a man, because of how, they say that, a man of God will just pursue you. Like, they will take initiative and they will, like, be mature about it. Like, there's just certain things that I felt like, okay, I don't think he likes me, or he's just not sure what he's doing. Like, I don't know. So when pastor said that kind of stuck with me. I'm like, okay, maybe he's not a man of God. He's like a boy of God. Like, he's trying to figure it out, which is fine. Like, we're all growing. I mean, I'm still learning. Like, goodness. It's just a long journey of learning. But I didn't really know what was going on there. It was a very messy situation. And there was this one point, there's two things I need to mention. So one of the siblings' significant others was assigned to me as a accountability partner very shortly into me starting in the group. And we'd called a couple times, and even like I think they helped me go somewhere one time because my car was down. And I opened up to things, or I opened up to them about things, and even shared my confusion about Church Boy. And they were like, oh, he's just figuring things out. Like, I wouldn't think about it. And almost like pushing me to this idea that he's not interested in you. Like, you need to chill. But I didn't know if they were just being protective because they cared about, the family. Like, I don't know. So, yeah, the hint was there that he wasn't interested, but he was acting the opposite. But again, I don't know what it means when a guy's attracted to you. I've never been pursued, like, correctly by a man of God because God said, hey, this is the girl that I want you to pursue. Like, I've never had that. I've had guys, flirt or whatever, but then I'm like, are you being nice, or are you being the bare minimum, or are you actually interested in me? Like, it's such a weird phenomenon for me. Like, I genuinely cannot tell when someone's interested in me. Maybe I'm just that, like, out of the loop, I guess. I don't know. But also, I've been mistreated so much of my life, so I don't know what it means to be treated nicely by a guy. Like, it's rough. So, he came across, like, friendly, and then looked at me a lot and, like, gave me a lot of eye contact in group settings. And then he would talk about certain things that were just like, why are we talking about this with me here? I don't know. He could argue all day with me about it if he wanted to, and it wouldn't matter because at the end of the day, it was my experience. Like, I was confused by him. I was confused by the entire situation, and I had no idea what was going on. But the signs that were happening or the coincidences that were going on, like, it was hard to not sit there and be like, God, is this you? Or am I just going insane? Because there is a lot happening. And like I said, a lot of it was tied in with scripture stuff. So I'm like, is it God? Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to think. And we could go into everything on the list, but I'm not going to waste that time. I will say the one that was the most disturbing, though. I had prayed a pretty, like, honest prayer with God about him about midway through the 6 months, and I'm like, Lord, please reveal yourself to me in whatever way you choose. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be thinking right now, and I don't know what he's supposed to be, or if I'm just, like, going crazy. Like, it was just a weird time. And so I really just put my heart out there for God, and I journaled it and everything because I can look back at it right now and tell you what it said, and it was pretty much that. And the next day, I was on a detour because my friend needed a ride somewhere, and we went this way that I don't normally go, as I said, a detour. And Church Boy was just walking on the side of the road. And I'm like, really, God? This is you revealing yourself? Is this what we're doing? He lived in the area, but it was farther away that it was just enough to be coincidental of, like, why are you here right now when I'm here? But again, Satan could have told me to go at the time that he did, and, like, it was one of those days where nothing was going as timely as it was supposed to, and, like, everything was off, and so I was like, oh, so the timing was just so perfect that he was here. And I understand that's strange. Like, anyone who is told that would be like, okay, that's a little weird. Why are you telling me that? Why are you thinking about that? Like, that's just life. But for me, being the girl that I am, I'm looking for everything and anything that could make it make sense because I was confused. So, yeah, that messed me up. I was really messed up after that. And I will mention that something my pastor said to me when we were working through that time was, it also could just be God saying, I see you. Like, you prayed about this boy and you were praying for all this, like, revealing of himself, God, to you, and then you see him on the side of the road. So maybe God's just saying, I care about you. I love you. I see you. And I was like, I love that. I really do. I don't know. I don't know if this means anything, but I mean, it was obvious that God did hear me, maybe. I mean, not maybe. Obviously, he did hear me, but I don't know what his intention still was to this day with that. So anyways, that messed me up pretty bad. Into the last 3 months, September, October, November, well, I guess October, November, December. So we went out for ice cream at some point, and like the group, and he was talking to some girl apparently, and overheard him talking to one of his siblings about it, and it just angered me. I'm like, I thought we were both in this like season of singleness because you broke up this girl, and I don't know if I mentioned that, but he said that when he was telling the group about the breakup at the beginning, like he wanted to be single and just dedicate his life to God and all that. And I'm just like, oh, we're both in the same season, but you're talking to somebody. Like, I'm not talking to him. Even though I'm struggling with all this stuff, like, I'm still, like, chasing after Jesus. Like, I spent so much time in the Word that season. It was insane. Like, that was one of the best seasons outside of the confusion of my life. Like, just God just around every corner, speaking to me, teaching me things, and just revealing himself all the time. Like, it was beautiful. But anyways, long story short, I'm not happy about it. Think I need to go ahead and be honest and tell him, like, hey, I don't hate you, actually. I really care about you. And again, I was still confused because I'm like, do I care about you? Do I want to save you? Like, empath stuff, I don't know, because I didn't really have that understanding that I was empathetic at the time. I just thought that I had, I thought I just cared about people a lot, like, specifically and directly and personally. So anyways, I ended up messaging him that night. I had his number because he gave it to the group and everything, and I just sent him a nice, like, lengthy message, but not, like, terribly long. If you know me, I like my books, and I will gladly stand on that because there's nothing wrong with communicating. Nothing. And I'm an over-explainer because I want to be thorough, because in the past, I've obviously been gaslit and things like that. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, no, I don't owe anybody an explanation, of course not, but I also feel like it's the best way for me to communicate is just being completely thorough. So my person, whoever he is out there, like, I'm sure he will respect that. Otherwise, we're not going to get married. So, it is what it is. But I sent him a message and I was just like, hey, I just want to communicate to you that I don't hate you. I know I come across that way, or I don't really know how I come across you. Like, I don't know what you're thinking about me, but I just want to let you know that I actually kind of think you're intriguing and you're cool, and I want to be your friend. I'm not in a place to date. I'm dedicating 6 months to God, and I know you are in a similar situation and have no intention of dating either. I just wanted to let you know that this is how I feel, and I don't know how you feel, so I just want to let you know. And he responds, and he's like, well, thank you for telling me all that. I can't feel anything. I'm broken. So that's probably why you didn't know how I felt. And I was like, oh, it's fine. Like, I'm sorry you're so broken and hurting. Like, I've been there. I just wanted to be honest with you and let you know what was going on because I didn't want you to have the wrong impression of what was happening. Like, again, I came across really, like, anti-him because I avoided him as much as I could. And then we were, like, decent, right? Like, life goes on. I kept going to group. And then the stuff just kept going on, though. And, like, looking back, maybe he was just being nice. Maybe he was just being a person. Again, I don't get treated by good guys right. Like, I don't get treated by guys right, period. So, I should say, because I don't want to speak that over my life. So, life went on. It was funky. I don't know. I just know in October I got COVID. I was fasting. He had just gotten it, a couple weeks ago. I got it from the group. And he was like, I reached out to him for help. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm scared. I don't do well with, stuff like this. And he called me and, like, gave me the rundown and was like, yeah, if you're fasting, you need to stop doing that. So I thought we were cool. I thought we were, like, friends-ish, But I guess we weren't friends that, like, talked, which made me sad. Again, I know it's weird to, like, tell someone you want to be friends with them. Like, I know we're not in kindergarten, but I don't know how to tell when a guy wants to be your friend. Like, I guess it just naturally happens. But also, I don't know how to, like, tell someone, like, hey, you're cool, I want to be your friend, without it being weird. Because, again, I don't know what people's intentions are. So, I mean, I thought telling him that would make it clear, like, I want to be your friend, I think you're cool. But maybe it was weird to him, because, I mean, I think it'd be weird if someone told me that. So, like, I get it, But also, I feel like I was just conveying, like, how I felt to him. So, Got through COVID, and then November was funky. It was bad. November and December were the worst. I thought everything would just like go away and we were going to be cool, but then like the stuff got worse. And I don't know how to explain it. Again, I have a whole list, but I don't want to even think about it. Like, it was just so much confusion. And he was more interactive with me on socials and like liking, my posts like very quickly, very first, story stuff, like stuff like that I noticed. And I know I'm not proud of it. It's not my best, time in my life. But stuff like that just kept happening. And I'm like, are we friends? Is that what friends do? Or is he trying to tell me something because my 6 months are coming to an end? Like, but then as I'm sitting there, like, I'm drawing up this fairy tale because to me, I'm like, I don't even see myself going on one date with this guy. Like, I can't even imagine us standing together, taking a picture together. Like, I am not the kind of person he would go for, and he's not the person I would go for. And something in my gut just didn't feel right, like, being with him. Like, I don't know. It was such a confusing thing. So I'm like, well, am I just, like, psyching myself out and self-sabotaging? I've been notorious for self-sabotage, so I don't know. So fast forward, there was a specific gift that I got him for Christmas, and I got everybody a gift, but his specific gift was something he mentioned one time we went to the apple orchard as a group in the fall, and for some reason when we were all hanging out, he just kept looking at me. I guess it's because I was the only one maybe giving eye contact. Like, I'm trying to look at all perspectives here and like validate his experience too, because I don't know what was going on in his head or if he like never even thought about me. Like, I have no idea. But the eye contact stuff definitely bothered me. And the people, like my best friend who went with me to a couple events with him there, he's like, he's just being weird. Like, I don't know what his deal is. Maybe he hasn't changed since high school. Like, I don't know. Like, Desi, you just... I'm sorry, buddy. Like, I'm sorry you're dealing with this again, basically. Because I've been played by guys before. But, he mentioned that this certain item he wanted for Christmas. So I was like, you know what? He invited me to this church, to this conference. It changed my life. Like, outside of our crap, my life was fantastic. Like, my life changed. Like, I rededicated my life to Christ, basically. Like, it was beautiful. And I'm literally not the same person now. Like, ever since then, I was never the same. So I wanted to just show him my gratitude, but also, like, the item he wanted, I was like, oh, like, that would just make him so happy. Like, I want him to be happy. He's been dealing with so much pain and so much, like, crap from the breakup and just a lot of girls. And not to mention, one of the people he dated was, like, a wreck. It was someone that I knew and I wanted to be friends with, but they just weren't, I guess I just wasn't cool enough for them. But they had, like, gone off the deep end and asked me if I wanted to have a three-way with them and their boyfriend, like, a week before the conference. And that connection alone bothered me. And I'm like, oh, that's, like, their ex. Like, that's Church Boy's ex. Like, I don't like that. That made me uncomfortable. So I know he had been through a lot with the people he's been with and just his history. And I cared about him regardless of the confusion and what was going on. And, like, I wanted to see him as a person. Like, that's what I genuinely struggle with, is I see people so much as a person that I kind of get blinded by their faults sometimes and their flaws. So anyways, I got the gift for him for Christmas, and I had to put it on his porch because it was not going to be carried into church. It was too big of an item. And it was like this blanket hoodie thing, and it was a specific one that he wanted, and I understand that can come across romantic or mushy, but that was not my intention. But I also just kind of didn't really know what I was doing, if I'm being honest. Like, I'll own up to that. I wanted him to have something to show him my appreciation, but I also didn't want him to know it was from me. But I expected him to acknowledge it was from me. So maybe I wanted him to figure out the mystery. I don't know. Honestly, I had been doing so good with, like, not being impulsive and, making wise decisions. So I think I wanted to just mix it up a little bit at the end. And that's just me being honest, because we're all human and make mistakes. And so I got everyone their gifts and I gave it to them on at Christmas Eve at the service. And my sister went with me, and it was a very fun time. And then after that, I go home and I'm just like waiting to hear from Church Boy. And I'm like, why am I waiting for him to text me like he knows who it's from? Or what if he's like embarrassed? Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what he's going to think. And I'm kind of embarrassed now. Like, what did I do? Why did I do this? What's this going to mean now? So long story short, I didn't hear from him. And this last week of the year was funky. I was in a weird place. So a couple days before New Year's Eve, he did like one of those ask me a question things on Instagram. And I messaged him and it was like, or I responded, I was like, how are you? And he responds and he says, good, with a very strict smiley face that's not like actually happy. And I was like, are you actually good? Like, everything okay? Again, thought we were friends. I don't know. And he responded and said, yeah, no, I'm great. Like, sorry, I should have, worded that differently or something. I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember what he said. But it was basically like, I'm good. Like, leave me alone. So then after that, there was a short book sent, like literally just one message, that was long enough for it to be a lot, I guess, to some people. And I don't remember specifically what it said. I know it was just like this general thing of like, I know I explained at the end, like if you knew what I've been through the past 6 months, you'd understand like why I'm sending this. But basically I'm just saying like, I'm here for you, I care about you, I pray for you, pray for your future wife. Like, I know that can sound strange, but I just want everybody to get what God has for them, regardless of who they are. I mean, I pray for all of the guys who've hurt me in the past to get right with God and to be in God's will and get what God has for them, to bless them with the girl that is right for them. Like, that's just my heart, and it's totally like pure. Like, I didn't have any ill intention of like, I'm praying for your future wife, like, be creeped out by me. Like, I wanted him to understand, like, I really do want you to have what God has for you, because I don't think I'm it, but I don't know what's happening. So, that message, he responds with, I think it was like, I appreciate it or something. It's all about Jesus. And I'm like, uh-huh. Yeah, Church Boy, it is all about Jesus, which is why I messaged you. That's literally what I just said. So then I send him a nice, like, 6-page book, because it was Instagram, so, Instagram messages length, explaining, I never wanted to get in your way. I don't want to do this. I don't know what's happening. I just want you to know that I care about you, and I support you, and I'm praying for you, and all this weird stuff has happened that's connecting me to you, and I don't understand it because I don't feel like I'm supposed to be connected to you, but I didn't know what you wanted because you were acting weird. I don't know if I even mentioned the part about, like, the you part, but my intention of sending that was, like, I want you to see my heart and understand that, like, I have no intention of getting in your way at all. Like, I want you to have what God has for you, whether I sound confused or not. Like, that is what I ultimately want. So, at the end of that, I did mention the gift was for him. I did mention the gift was from me. And I told him I just wanted you to have something to make you happy. Because you've been through a lot and you deserve to be happy. And I wanted to show you my appreciation for everything that you did. And so he responds, he does not respond. So, okay. So, I'm sitting there and I'm reading this message and I'm like, I'm proud of myself. Like, I feel good. Like, after word vomiting everything out and, like, finally putting it out there, like, this is what's been going on. This is how weird things have been. Here's my heart. Hope we're cool. I felt better. I mean, all that weight of those 6 months, like, was just gone. And I kid you not, like, I felt so free. He did leave me on red, which is fine. It is what it is. But for me, I'm like, I communicated. I told him the truth. And now I'm good. So New Year's Eve was fantastic. The next day, oh my gosh, I had an amazing New Year's Eve. I remember just feeling like really confident and free, just really trusting that I was where God wanted me to be. And I think what I needed was to cough that up. I needed that out there. And any guy in my past knows, like, that's what it took for me to be better. And some people were mature enough to handle, 2-hour phone calls about how I really feel. And other guys just did what Church Boy did and left me on red and, just couldn't handle the texts. And it is what it is. Like, that's not my person if you can't handle it anyway. But thank you for at least hearing me or at least opening the message, So, fast forward, I go to church that first week of January, and I was anxious a little bit that morning. I remember, like, being stressed about my sweater matching my shoes, and I don't know, it was, like, I'm calm, but I'm a little jittery. But I was naturally, girl, boy, whoever you are, I literally could not eat because of my anxiety in general every Sunday morning. But then I literally would have, like, these anxiety attacks at church. So there was so much fear already on Sunday morning. So that, like, was there, but it wasn't as strong. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I really do feel better, But I was still anxious. I mean, I'm pretty sure I went to the bathroom, like, every single Sunday morning. Like, I would go there early just to go to the bathroom because I knew I was going to be anxious. So, sorry for the TMI, but that's just the life of someone with anxiety. If you feel me, like, I'm sorry you get it too. But basically, I went to Sunday school, and I go upstairs, and Church Boy's sitting there, and he's talking to the group. We're all just kind of, hanging out before a group gets started. And he's got this book that I'm like, of course, the book that I just got, and I'm going to be reading. Whatever. And I knew that he had this interview for a job that he wanted, and I had been praying for that. So I actually spoke up, and I asked him, I was like, hey, Church Boy, how did your interview go? And he almost looked, like, startled when I talked to him, and I was like, oh, hopefully we're cool. Like, I know I said a lot. Like, I just, like, threw up all over you. I know that was a little awkward. But I was hoping that, I truly hoped that God just showed him my heart in that. And again, yeah, it would have been nice to get a response and be like, wow, Desi, I had no idea you were dealing with all this. Like, I want to clear it up. I don't have any feelings for you. I would love for you to, be a part of this group, and we enjoy having you here, whatever, like, just a quick reassurance. That would have been cool, but of course I, got left on red. So I didn't know what he was thinking or feeling, but I knew I felt better, so I'm like, who cares? I feel better. So anyways, he tells me that he had the interview and things are looking up. He also had planned to do something with the military at some point, so I also felt like that was a pretty big answer of this isn't what God wants for me, because I never imagined being with someone in the military. Like, ever. So that was, whatever. But anyways, long story short, to get to the good stuff, I'm chilling, waiting for group to get started, and the lady who I mentioned at the beginning of the story, who, talked to me after the conference and was really sweet, I had opened up to her a couple times in the past few months prior to this about anxiety and just, my weaknesses and my struggles, and she actually came up and asked me if we could talk. And I was like, yeah. Like, I thought she was just going to check in on me, and I was going to tell her, like, I feel a lot better. I'm getting ready to, like, be a member of the church. I decided that I wanted to do that after everything the past couple months of being at the church and just feeling that's where God wanted me to put my feet and plant them. And she takes me out of the room, and we go into a different room, and we're walking there, and I'm just like, oh, like, we must really be talking. Like, I don't know what's going on. So I go in the room, I sit down, and my mind is so, like, this was a very hard experience for me, so I don't remember every detail, thank God. But I remember just sitting there talking to her, trying to, like, stay calm, because I didn't know what was happening. And then the doors opened, and church mom walks in the door, and my heart drops to my stomach. I immediately start sobbing, and I'm like, well, great, the one time I decided to wear makeup to church, it's all over my face now. And she comes over and sits down, like, just with that look of, like, I know, honey. And I'm like, you act like someone just died. Like, what is about to happen? And so she comes over, and she's like, well, I first want to tell you that the one person, the one of the siblings, couldn't be here. They really wanted to be here for this, but they're on this trip, so they can't be here right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm getting ready to be like, and this is an intervention or something. Like, the vibe was just so intense. And Church Boy's mom is talking to me, and she's like, one day you're going to find someone who's just blah, 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 all the good stuff, about a guy. But it's not Church Boy. And I'm like, okay, I kind of figured that. Like, why couldn't he just tell me that? And why are you telling me this? Why are we here? Like, I was so confused, and I'm just distraught because I am so embarrassed right now. Like, so ashamed that we are here, that I put myself in this position, that I am being confronted about a crush at church when I want to be learning about what's going on upstairs. Like, I was excited for that lesson, and like God's first lesson for me, going into the new year. And then I'll just go through the bullet points because I don't want to, relive it. She told me this was the most heartbreaking part. She says that, Church Boy has had a rough history with a lot of girls, and he's not made the best decisions, and she's gotten on to him about, like, how to treat women and, like, how he handles crushes and, liking people and stuff. And then tells me that he needs a strong woman. Nothing else. Just those words. And I'm like, I'm hysterical, of course, like crying my eyes out, like, I'm not strong now. Like, it just destroyed me. I'm not gonna lie. And to this day, I don't know if she understands the impact of what that did to me. The problem isn't the fact that, I'm being told I'm not strong. Like, that alone hurt. But I had gotten to this place where I was really convinced of my strength in that season, especially because I had my previous counselor going into that 6 months. She left, and she told me that you are a symbol of resilience that I use in my interviews and certain things that she does with her work. And that really validated everything for me. And going into that season, I'm like, you know what? I am really resilient. Like, the crap that I've gotten through, like, basically, like, that was rough. But what hurt me to the core was a mother telling me that. A mother that I wanted to be like a mother to me. I loved her. I loved her family. And I mean, yeah, I sort of liked who Church Boy was, but I loved their family, and I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to have a family, and I thought that if we were together, then maybe I would have that. There are a lot of guys in my past that I've loved their mother more than them, and that's why I wanted to be with them. Like, then I ended up liking them for who they were, but it ultimately starts with the mom. Like, it's rough, So I hear this mother figure tell me, I'm not strong. And she didn't say, you're not strong. She said, Church Boy needs a strong woman, suggesting that I must not be. And I'm like, you know what? Oh, gosh. Like, that message that I sent was one of the strongest things I think someone can do. Vulnerability is strength, people. So I don't care who tells you you are weak for speaking your heart out. You don't stop doing it. Because that's the problem with this world. We need to be vulnerable. There are too many fake people out here telling the wrong stories and not enough truth. Oh, I'm not going to get on my soapbox right now, but just please don't listen to anyone. Like, yeah, that hurt me. It broke me. But to this day, I still tell all my truth. I'm still here, right? I'm still talking about my truth. So it tells me I'm not strong. And then, oh my gosh, I'm just like, I just wanted you to like me. Like, and she's like, oh, honey, I do like you. I know your heart. I've seen your messages with the accountability partner person. I'm like, my personal confidential text messages with my accountability partner? Like, I thought accountability was supposed to be a safe place. Like, I'm pretty sure the rule is if you're hurting yourself, going to hurt someone else, or if you're in danger, that's when you speak up. So why in the world are my personal words that I spoke to someone in confidence being shared? So that really upset me. And I mean, that betrayal just really sucked because I really trusted that person. And I don't think they know to this day that that affected me. And then the other thing, she said that, my sister's watching me. I'm going to help all these girls. And my sister looks up to me and I'm like, girl, you know nothing about my baby sister. Like, she is the complete opposite of me. I love Lizzie with all my heart. We do not see the same things the same. Like, at all. Like, the girl does not believe in the things that I believe in. Like, she's not watching me in the way that this, woman was portraying. And that just really upset me because I'm like, you know nothing about me. Here you are saying I'm not strong. You apparently know my heart because you read my text messages, which is totally not it. Like, those messages were in an emotional state of mind. Like, that's not entirely who I am. Like, there's so much more to me. And then what upset me more than anything was, like, this group, I was constantly paranoid, thinking that I didn't fit in and that they didn't like me and they didn't want me there. And I was dealing with this strong paranoia about that. And they just confirmed everything in this conversation, And the one thing that really upset me, she didn't know what I was dealing with. I was taking my sister, who was like my child, taking care of her. I was taking her to a eating disorder center daily because she was dealing with this deathly eating disorder. And none of these people knew, like, the weight and responsibility of what I was dealing with. Like, none of them knew who I was. And that still upsets me. Like, I'm just being honest. Like, I felt like I never really got to be seen for who I was because all they could see was Desi from high school. And that was sickening for me because I'm like, I'm not her anymore. I may have made similar mistakes as her in the past since being an adult, but that's not who I am. And, like, I'm never going to be able to shake these labels. Like, after hearing what that mom said to me and going through that experience, like, it felt like everything was back again. Like, I'm just that same person that I was in high school, and I'm never going to get rid of those labels. It was really hard. I was distraught. I was ashamed and embarrassed beyond all words. And then she tells me that they can't accept the gift. Or, sorry, he can't accept the gift. It's in their car. Well, I never got it back. Which is fine. I didn't want it back anyway. But it's like this whole big deal, like he couldn't accept it. I'm like, he can't accept it because why? Because it'll remind him of me? Because it's too much? Like, gifts have no price. Like, people who just are givers at heart, like, that's just what they do. I've given some pretty intense gifts to people, and my intention for that was just say, hey, I love you, I care about you, I see you. I don't know why there's anything wrong with that. But again, some people can get uncomfortable, so that's fine. Like, his experience is just as valid. But to this day, I have no idea if he even knows what I experienced or what happened. I don't know if he even knows it happened. I don't know. If you're here, then hi, this happened. I forgive you and we're cool. And same for the mom and everyone in the group. Like, I love you all. I'm so glad you're all thriving and I've been praying for you guys. It is what it is. You just weren't my people and that's fine. God used this in a way to strengthen me even more. So I know my worth. I know who I am and I know that I was strong from the beginning. And some people just don't do communication like that and that's fine. This is my story and it's valid and you're forgiven. Like, both truths can exist at the same time. But yeah, it was hard. And the only other thing that I remember that was mentioned that's important was they wanted me to come back. The mom's like, we want you to come back. You make a great addition to the group. And I'm like, I don't want to be a freaking addition to the group. I want to be a part of something. I want to have a place in something. I didn't have community ever. Like, basically high school, I had a couple girlfriends that were totally in love with Jesus, and that was about it. Like, even in the church that I went to, it was hard for me to find people that I could do life with, be like. Like, it was just hard because no one loved Jesus and no one was like on fire or genuine. And even when I was in sin, like, I was trying so hard to surround myself with the right people and I just couldn't find them. Like, I wanted to get better. I wanted to be in a better place. I wanted to experience what God had for me. But that group, like, I just wanted to be a part of, I wanted to be a part of their family even, like, I just wanted to be a part of something. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think they wanted me to be a part of it. And when she said addition, that was my confirmation that I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Like, this, if I am the only one texting them, literally like weekly, checking in, like for months I would text them, hey, how are you doing? How can I be praying for you this week? How was this thing that you had me pray for last week? Like, just constantly checking in with them. No one did that with me. No one was bothering me to see how I was doing. They did a couple things for me that I felt like they just, needed to. And that was, I got a ride because my car was having issues when we went to an event. It was the Apple Orchard, I believe. And the other one was, my car was down and I needed to take my sister to the center. And the accountability partner person took me. And, that was a sacrifice and I appreciated that, but ultimately I just did not feel like they wanted me there. So, yeah, I go home. After I'm done seeing her face and crying out every tear in my body, I'm like, all right, I got clarity. I mean, I prayed for clarity, God, and you gave it to me. So, I got my answer. That's not it. This isn't it. And I did go back to that church. I did not go back to the group. And people were asking me where I was on Sunday. People in the congregation that knew me. It was actually the family's grandma. I loved that grandma so much. She was the sweetest thing in the world. But yeah, she messaged me and she's like, where were you on Sunday? I'm like, I was there. I was in the back row by myself. Because it was a big church, and I will say I'm not a big fan of big churches. Like, I want the pastor to know me more than just my name, and that's what I love about my church is it's just small enough and big enough to be everything that I want. And I stuck it out for a couple months there, and the group didn't bother reaching out or anything. I think the person who wanted to be there but couldn't be messaged me one time asking me if I was going, and I was going to a concert that night because 21 Pilots did a free concert that year, which was the biggest mistake they've ever made, but it was so fun. It was like 0 degrees. It was so cold. But yeah, it was like this, just clarity that I don't need to be here. So my pastor asked me if I wanted to come back to the church that I was going to previously. And, their doors were open again and all that. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I need somewhere to go for now. And he's like, you can just sit by the fire. You don't have to commit to anything. So I did. And to this day, I'm now a member and I'm going there and life's great there. I found my people. I found people that I can be real with, even if they don't relate. And I'm still accepted for who I am there. So I'm very grateful that God led me to where I was supposed to go. It just took me a while to get there. And ultimately, as far as the signs go, guys, I still to this day don't understand it. I don't know what was God, what was Satan, but I did find out something pretty crazy. I read this book called The Bondage Breaker by Neil T. Anderson, and I was reading it in January, like right after all this went down, and there's this section that talks about signs and wonders. And I'm going to read this to you really quickly. It says, not every miraculous manifestation is from God. God can use signs and wonders to confirm the word, but the Bible also warns that false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show signs and wonders in order to lead astray, if possible, the elect, which is Mark 13:22. Satan can also perform signs and wonders, though, and he does so to direct our worship away from God to himself. Deuteronomy 13:5-11 reveals the seriousness of attributing to God the activity of Satan. Persons who misled in this way were to be executed, even if they were relatives. Every use of the word sign or wonder, either together or separate in the context of Christ's second coming, is associated with a false prophet, false teachers, or false Messiah. God may perform signs and wonders today, but Satan does too. Or so does Satan, that's what it says. So yeah, I think Satan had a lot of his nasty fingers in that mess, and I don't know. I have no clue. I mean, it was so weird because the church was constantly confirming that I needed to be there at the time, and I feel like maybe it was just all a test, and God allowed it. But God allows free will to happen, and God allows certain tests to happen. And I think ultimately I did pass the main test, which was stay true to your promise to me. I told God that I was going to give him 6 months. Yeah, I literally told him, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to date. Like, I am committed to this 6 months with God. But this is my heart. I just don't want you to think I hate you and all that good stuff. So it is what it is. Life has moved on. I'm in a better-ish place, at least with that kind of stuff. So yeah, you can absolutely be deceived by Satan with signs. And just like I was talking about with manifestation earlier, he can do all kinds of weird stuff that you wouldn't even think twice about, But it's important to remember, Proverbs 3:5-6 says to trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all of your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths, or make your path straight. So you cannot lean on your own understanding of a situation. You need to trust God with every piece of your heart. And if I knew exactly what that looked like, I'd tell you. To me, I'm still learning. I'm not going to lie, like, you, the person who asked the question, you sent that question literally right after I was in a situation where I was like, is this a sign? Like, no joke. I go home, I open my phone, and it says, how do you tell the difference between a sign and a coincidence? And I'm like, you tell me. I genuinely still don't know. I'm just taking from what I've learned in the past, and God has shown me time and time again what he sounds like. And sometimes Satan, he does come as an angel of light. He masks himself in this way that can be deceiving. So it's hard to tell sometimes what's him. And ultimately, I just try so hard to not mess up anything that God, or mess up anything and step out of God's plan. So I just don't do anything unless I have extreme peace about it and true clarity that this is what God wants. But going into new things is terrifying. Like, very. I know I've mentioned a lot of stuff with guys, but I have not actually really dated in years. I attempted to date a guy technically is it last summer or the summer before? No, it would be 2 summers ago, because we're in 2024 now. Yeah, so 2 years ago, I went on a date with a guy who was not a man of God, and that was made clear to me on the first date. And, that was what it was. Like, it was just, nope, okay, this isn't it. This isn't what God has. But there was one other guy that I met. We didn't date. We did talk, but we didn't talk like you would think we'd talk. This boy was a vessel of God. Like, Jesus was just speaking right through his mouth. Almost 24/7, it felt like. Like, we had, 90% of our conversations was just about Jesus. About our walks, about our faith. And I wouldn't even say 10% of it was about us, because we barely talked about us. Like, our feelings or what we thought about each other. But there was a time where we did address our feelings. But anyways, I met him the day that my sister went on this first date with this girl. And it was a very, very toxic relationship that would in turn cause me and my sister to have a toxic experience together. And we just did not do well that season. We were barely able to talk to each other. So I needed this guy. It was my first man of God I've ever met in my life, who truly loved Jesus more than he could love anyone else. And we had a lot in common. We reminded each other of ourselves, which I thought was crazy. I didn't know people like that could exist. But he was like everything that I would consider what I wanted, my type and everything. But it still didn't sit completely right with me, and I was scared. It was a very weird combination because, again, I didn't know if I was gonna, like him. I didn't know if I did like him because my fear associated with feelings kind of got in the way. Like, I couldn't tell if I was scared of him or if I actually liked him. And then the way that the attraction was different because I'm like, I am attracted to you. You scare me, but you're also safe. I've never, in my entire 25 years, been with a guy who I felt physically attracted to and also safe. Never happened. Like, ever. So that was a new experience for me, for sure. And when he came in my life, I was actually, so this is like a sign, I guess, or something, if you want to call it that. I was going through a Bible study that I took a break on because I was doing something else, and I came back to it, and it was going into this book, which was his name. It was because he's a Bible name. So it was the book of blank, and I'm like, oh, Lord, is this you saying, like, we're going into the book of him? Like, is that what we're doing right now? Like, I was a little scared. But I kept talking to him. We kept talking every day. We would send these audios to each other like 20 minutes every single day. It was crazy. And I had a friend. I had a friend who I could safely go to about anything and everything. To this day, we have the most honest conversations. We don't talk every day. We don't talk really much at all. I think I've talked to him like once this year. And he's just, one that I know I can call on if I need it. And I'm grateful for how it went down. But when I saw that coincidence, I was like, okay, I don't know what to think about this. And then the other thing that happened, I saw a video during that time. I was terrified, right? Like, I didn't know if this was God. I didn't want to get hurt. I was so scared of getting hurt. And I saw this video, and this girl was like, if you want to know if something's from God's will, ask God to let there be light. And I think it was like Ashley Layerton. I don't know how to say her last name or what is the spelling is because it's all combined in her username. But that girl that does the honey scoop, I believe, she posted it, and I think it was her. I'm pretty sure it was her. But anyways, I ended up praying that, that night. I was like, Lord, like, let there be light with man of God if that's, what you want. And the next day, he sends me all these messages about Bible scriptures regarding light. And I don't want to say like it was like a buttload or anything, but it was enough for me to be like, that's a lot of talk about light, and I don't know how to feel about that. Okay, God, maybe this is you. And so there was a specific verse in that book of him that God kept bringing up, and I would see it all over the place, just social media, just in my reading, in my books I was doing, like, I'd see it all the time, and it was basically, I'm not going to say what the scripture is, but it was basically reassuring me that, like, you got to trust me and chill out. So I did, and it was hard, every day that season, and we talked from, I think she went on the date in October, maybe. It was September or October. I know it was in the fall. And then we stopped talking in February, so it wasn't too long. And basically, I just kept pushing through, And ultimately, I knew deep in my gut that this isn't the person I'm probably going to marry. And he knew it too. But we did think we liked each other at one point, and it scared us because we're both like, I don't want to date, like, I don't know what to do. And he knew he wasn't in a place to pursue me, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to be pursued right now. Like, it was such an odd thing. So at the end of it all, I ended up praying and begging God for clarity, and I asked him for a list of things that I wanted in life, and one of them was clarity on him because I'm confused, and I don't like being confused. And the next day I got clarity, and he told me I don't see you that way. So I was like, okay, that's great. Thank you. Like, oh my gosh, I'm just happy to know the answer because I was so tired of not knowing. It went on too long when nothing was, progressing or changing. So yeah, there were only a couple things, and it was pretty consistent, and it was peaceful. So I feel like, maybe that, I believe it was God, I believe that no devil in hell can stop what God has for you. And I have never talked to someone in my life that was that confirmed. Like, God was just so confirming and reassuring that this is what I have for you. This is who I want you to talk to right now. This is who I want you to experience life with. And it was scary. And to this day, like, I'm still scared of doing it again. And I literally, like, I cried a lot after, he told me that he didn't want to be with me ever, because I was like, oh, that means we got to do it again? I don't want to do it again. Like, I'm scared. That was really scary, letting someone see my heart and be fully accepting of it. Because, again, no guy ever really saw me and wanted all of me, but especially no man of God. And I mean, he straight up rejected, like, renounced the lies over me that were spoken over me, the stuff that I said about myself. And he saw me in a way that I'm like, only I could dream of this. Like, a guy seeing me as this not broken thing. It was terrifying, but also I feel like God was trying to say, hey, this is out there. This is possible. You can absolutely be respected and loved by someone who also loves me more than you, and I don't know. I'm grateful, because out of all the guys that hurt me and rejected me and, caused trauma, I got one experience with a guy that showed me we exist. And it's possible to feel safe with someone and think they're really freaking cute. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can do this. Like, maybe one day it will make sense. And I have begged God to just hide me. Don't let me be found by anybody that's not him. And I don't believe in soulmates, but I do believe that God gives us really good options. And I haven't had any, like, specific options since that guy. No one has shown any interest in me that is a man of God that I feel like is worth my time. So, if it doesn't sit right with you, it's probably not God. That's my first note here. I want to give you my answer here, because we're going to wrap this up. You need to have peace about it. And another thing, there are certain people in my life that I trust are in line with God and follow his word and hear his voice. Those are the people that I go to advice for. I don't talk to the people that aren't in line with God. Or if they do try to give me advice, I take it with a grain of salt, because I'm like, nope, you're not speaking, like, God's not speaking through you. And if there's something that doesn't sit right within you about it, you don't have peace. Peace is a constant thing. When I'm in God's will, which I feel like I am right now, like, life feels simple. And when it doesn't feel simple, I'm like, okay, something's not right. Like, what do I have in my life that's not right? And that might be a little too, black and white thinking, but for me, that's just what's worked. So I really encourage you to make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people, or at least, well, I mean, we can get into that too, but definitely when you go to people about advice, or just listening to what other people are telling you about your life and, like, what to do, only listen to those that you know are really, like, in line with God. Otherwise, you might be listening to just a coincidence, something Satan's trying to do. So always be alert, because we know that, Satan is prowling around like a lion, like, ready to devour. So you keep your alert up, and don't give something second thought unless God says, like, this is something for me. Again, that sounds so easy to do, because I literally am still trying to figure it out, but God has shown me, like, some things are just going to be strange, and you have to trust me. And another thing, this is, like, the biggest thing ever, you have to be in the Word of God if you want to understand God's voice. And that's coming from someone who neglected the Word of God up until 2021, when everything changed for me. I hated history, and I hated anything that had to do with history, so the Bible was considered that. Not that I hated the Bible, but I specifically only wanted to read the New Testament stuff, because it was, like, to you, application, easier to understand. But the Old Testament, I was like, So I'm coming to you as an imperfect person who struggled with reading the Bible. Like, worship was my language with God. Like, that's what I did to grow, was prayer and worship. So I know reading in the Word is hard, but even if it's just a chapter a day, just trying to bathe in that Word of God just a little bit each day, because you can't hear God's voice if you're not familiar with what it sounds like, and that's how we find that out. So I really encourage you to try to get that right before you make any decisions. And of course, like, I'm talking about relationship stuff with my experiences, but whether it's like a job or just like a decision that needs to be made, God will not mislead you. And the best part about everything that I've learned about anytime I've messed up, He never makes you start back at square one. You just pick up right where you left off. So if you screw up and you like step out of God's will, or you make a mistake, or you do something that He didn't want you to do, you just get back on the path and just go back right back where you were and just keep going. And that's how good He is. Like, He just lets us pick up where we left off, and you're not held to this like unbelievable standard and have to like go back and clean up everything. Like, He's just so good to us. He's so gracious, and you never have to like carry that weight, because that's what stops people from turning around and going back and doing the right thing is, oh, I'm going to have to start over. I'm going to have to deal with all this guilt. Like, God will wash you clean and pick you right back up. You just have to be willing to admit that you messed up and own up to that, and you'll put away your pride, because God does know best. And in my situation with Church Boy, God knew what I was going to do from the beginning. Like, He let that happen to teach me this lesson, and now I understand even more of how deceptive Satan can be. And maybe I need to know that for some reason in the future. I don't fully know. I just know that I've learned a lot about Satan's little tips and tricks of what he does, and he is a pain. Like, you have to be alert. You have to be watching out, because he will easily get to you. I have recently had a biblical counselor who straight up spoke a lie over me, and it made me basically think that there was something wrong with me that wasn't wrong with me. That was not God speaking through that person, but that was a believer, a woman of God who I trusted, and clearly she was still used by Satan. So even that, like, you gotta be careful. You have to be alert, because anything can be a lie or be deceptive, and you just really have to listen to what God says and hear His voice and hear His heart, because He won't ever lie to you. It's impossible for God to lie. Literally, that's in the scriptures. Don't know where it's at. Can't remember the reference because I really suck at references. But God will never lie to you. So yeah, I think I covered mostly everything of my answer. The last thing I want to do is I just want to share some things I read and put together. So coincidence wasn't even used much in the Bible. I think it was only like one time is what I read. I don't remember what the story was, and I don't speak Greek, so work with me here. But the Greek word for coincidence is synkrion, which is a combo of son, which means together with, and kurios, which means supreme in authority. So altogether, that means what occurs together by God's providential arrangement of circumstances. So if you break that down, a coincidence is not really a coincidence as we English define it. Like, I don't know, I mean, I feel like at one point I was frustrated because I told you that something happened that night you sent that message, that question, and I got home and I'm like, so is everything just a coincidence? And someone who was in my life who's not in line with God gave me that advice and said, you can't think of anything because everything's a coincidence. Like, life is just life. It's not God. And I'm like, that's not what the other people are saying. So, if my pastor and a man of God who I, can reach out to and trust that will never mislead me are saying that not everything is a coincidence and God does have providential power, like, we have to remember God is all the omnis. He is in control. Proverbs 16:33 says that, we may throw the dice, but the Lord determines how they fall. So even that is in God's hands. So you can't put it out of God's power thinking He's not in control of everything. Again, I think that is a mystery still that none of us are going to be able to fully understand, because it would be understanding Him. And He's not meant to be fully understood, because then He wouldn't be God. He has to be greater than our minds can comprehend for Him to be God. And the other one, I love this verse. Proverbs 19:21 says, "You can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose prevails." So no matter what you think you're putting together, like, yeah, I was like trying to figure out what was going on with the signs with Church Boy and trying to figure out what God's big plan was. But he was the one who, made the purpose prevail. Like, he had purpose for all of that, and he made it work out. And we know that Romans 8:28 says that all things work together for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So everything is all going to work out. Like, even what happened with Church Boy, like, I'm still here, I'm thriving, I'm getting by. Like, it didn't break me down. If anything, that just made me stronger. So it's all for God's glory. He's just so great, and he pulls us through everything. And just a simple reminder, Luke and Matthew both mentioned that, he knows the number of our hairs on our head. Like, that's how much he cares about you, how much he knows about you. And then he knows when a sparrow falls to the ground, like his creation falling to the ground. So there's nothing left unseen. There's nothing he doesn't know about. There's nothing that he doesn't care about. So even in my fear, like, to this day of struggling with, like, God, is that you? He knows that. He knows my heart. He sees my heart, and he sees my desperation to please him and to honor him and to walk in his truth. So for anybody who's not a believer and you're still here and you're listening to this, whether you don't have God or not, that is always present and real. Like, God does love you. He sent his son to die for you. Just know that God loves you, and that he's always an arm's length, just waiting for you to run to him, to be saved from everything that this world offers. And goodness, just don't be deceived by spiritual things that are not God. Please. Even if you are not a believer in God, please don't fall for the demonic stuff, because it's out there. And demons can do just what angels can do. Like, just like Satan has power, demons have power, angels have power. It's a spiritual battle. So I believe that there was a spiritual battle going on in a lot of the situations that I've been in. But like I said, you can't really know God's will for you in the full picture. You're never going to know that. Like, you might be on your deathbed when you figure out, like, oh, this was my entire life story. Like, this is what God wanted. I believe, I don't know the reference, but there's a verse that says that the word is a light unto our feet and a light unto our path, or something like that. And someone had pointed out to me, a mentor that I just love and adore, she told me that, that's just a couple feet away. Like, God's not going to give you the whole stinking path. You're going to just get a couple steps forward. Like, that's all he is. And the word part, God is the word. The word equals God, God equals the word. So we're not going to get the whole picture. And every freaking piece of life is just about trusting God and having faith. And I don't know. I don't know what anything means, if I'm being honest. I just know that I can trust God. I know that I can listen for his voice and not be misled. And if I get misled and if I get tripped up, he will pull me back in place if I am willing. And it's all going to be okay. I can assure you that. So just be alert. Use your discernment. Surround yourself with people who can speak the word of God in your life and who are also in line with God, so that they don't mislead you. And just take things back to the word and take things back to God. When you don't know if something's from him, ask him. Maybe you'll have a better understanding than I will. Because for me, I know I just struggle with hearing God specifically and knowing what's him. So that's just my battle. Not everyone deals with that. And there's one more thing that I want to read to you really quickly, and we will just end with this. It's Isaiah 46, 9 through 11. Remember the things I have done in the past, for I alone am God. I am God, and there is none like me. Only I can tell you the future before it even happens. Everything I plan will come to pass, for I do whatever I wish. I will call a swift bird of prey from the east, a leader from the distant land, to come and do my bidding. I have said what I would do, and I will do it. God is good, and God is faithful, and he keeps his word. And he is just God. Like, you can just rest in that assurance that he is God. He will take care of you from the beginning to the end. He's watching over every little step you take. And he holds the whole freaking world in his hands. Like, he's got everything under control, no matter how out of control things may seem. And this is me preaching to the choir because I need to hear it myself. To this day, I don't know if I'll get married again. I desire to be married again. I have not been presented with another man of God. And I believe that, if that's God's will, then I will know that. But I have to just trust him and not the signs and coincidences, I just have to trust that his will be accomplished. And more than anything, when we can get into relationships another time and, that deeper topic, but just remember that Matthew 6:33 says to seek first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and everything else will be added to you. Like, you just keep your eyes on Jesus and he will take care of everything else. None of that is in your, hands. He will take care of that. You just keep your eyes on him and he won't mislead you. So I hope I helped. I hope that you were entertained by all my drama of my past. But for real though, I just appreciate the safe place to talk about these things. And I hope that it helps someone, even if it's just one person, that I've done my job. I'm out here to tell the truth. And yeah, I know that, oh my goodness, one second. The book. So the book was about forgiveness. It was Forgiving What You Can't Forget by Lisa Turkhurst. So I finished that book and then, of course, went through a forgiveness journey, which I'll talk about at a different time, of course, because that's a whole other different story. But it was ironic that I went through that book because it was with one of the siblings of the family, so I had to forgive them. I had to work through that. As I was saying, Jeanette McCurdy wrote this book. It was a memoir about her life, and she mentioned something about, she had to wait till certain people died to tell her story. And I'm just sitting here like, if I have to wait till all the people that hurt me, like a part of my story, until they die before I tell my truth, like, I might as well be on my deathbed. Like, it's just, I can't, So, like, all respect in the world for those people, that any that are going to be future mentioned or in the past already that I said. This isn't about trashing on people. This is telling my story. And unfortunately, when people hurt you, you just can't really get around that. Like, you have to tell the story for what it is. And I'll do my best to respect everyone. And I have no bitterness towards literally any of them. Like, this is what we gotta do, So with that, I just thank you guys for everything. And I hope that this is a safe place. And I hope you feel wanted and loved here. And I hope that I'm helping. That's just my goal. I will be opening up my my DMs if you want to reach out and ask me a question that you want me to discuss on here. Please just message me, and it's at Deserae K. I'll put a little thing somewhere on the screen. But yeah, that'll be open. I'll do my best to answer every single one of them, and I'm looking forward to the conversations that we'll have. And please know there are never any stupid questions ever. No matter how silly it may sound to you, please ask it. Because you don't know who needs to hear it. And you don't know, sometimes the things you think are dumb are not dumb to anybody else. Like, we're just mean to ourselves and we're our own worst critic. So please just know that there will be no judgment and it'll be absolutely confidential. No one will know it was you that asked. So yeah, that's open. You guys can start sending me your questions. And I appreciate you just again for being here. And I hope we can all heal together. This is a place where I just want everyone to be a part of the healing. So if you're with it, then come along for the journey and have a great day, night, whatever time it is. And I will see you next time.